Please know that some of the material in this program may include views or recommendations of third parties which do not necessarily reflect the views of Manatee Educational Television or indicate its commitment to a particular course of action. METV cannot be held liable for the accuracy of information that has been provided by third parties.
Hello, welcome to Lifelines. I'm Larry Linehauser.
And I'm Robert Day. The tsunami that we've all been seeing about in the news certainly is something that could be slim to none for happening here in Florida, but certainly disasters like that could happen that would not only affect us here on the Sun Coast, but also regionally. And we're going to be talking to some experts today as far as what we could do short-term and long-term to assist in a disaster that not only affects us, but could be the whole Gulf Coast or the southeast United States. And certainly our thoughts and prayers do go out to those victims of the tsunami. Who do we have today, Larry?
Today we have a couple special guests on the first segment. We have Lori Fagans, who's Emergency Management Chief of Manatee County Department of Public Safety. And we have Charlie Roberts, who's the Operations Officer with Manatee County Emergency Management as well. Welcome to the show, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
Glad to be here.
Rob, I'll let you start off with a question.
Now, first, we're going to cover long-term later, but as far as the short-term aspects, this past hurricane season has shown us that lots of things can happen to us here in Manatee County on the Sun Coast. What can you all tell us about the short-term situation as far as something that large?
Well, the first thing emergency managers have to do is assess the situation. You have to know how much damage is out there, and we have certain teams that do that.
Just to kind of, even like Rob said, a tsunami is an unlikely event to happen in Manatee County, I hope. However, anymore after last year's storm season, I don't put anything off the boat. But something of that magnitude, where do you begin the whole process? I mean, is it the guys you were just talking about, or how do you start cranking up an operation of that magnitude?
If you have that kind of a magnitude, you're probably going to be the one that's impacted. Therefore, you're going to look for mutual aid. You're going to have the state come in and assist you, and then other counties that aren't impacted, and that's what mutual aid is all about. So we'd be looking for other counties to help us.
And if something should happen in a larger region, does that mutual aid also go maybe beyond the state if needed?
The state of Florida has a program called EMAC, and that we go out to other states, and that's why it's so important that we train the same way so that somebody coming into your community can run your show, your shop, the same way that you would.
Now, you mentioned briefly about those teams. Is that something like the assessment teams or first-in teams, or what? I think Charlie works with some of those.
Yeah, we've got a couple of different team concepts. One is the first-in team concept and damage assessment teams. First-in teams are if we know in advance that we're going to be impacted by a disaster, for example, a hurricane, then we can pre-deploy those teams to go out and take a look and render some assistance and provide some intel to what's going on. If we don't have notice of the disaster, for example, a tornado or a tsunami that's hopefully not going to happen here, then we'd have to generate those teams up after the fact and send them out. Fortunately here we've got quite a few trained teams and they would go out and they know what to do in advance in case they need to do that.
Good. Along that vein, what as an operations officer with emergency management, what would be your primary responsibility in the event something happened this last season with back-to-back storms? I mean, what do you do?
Well, anything that the incident commander wants done, the incident command and the policy group folks that make the decisions of the things that need to happen in the county, they say make these things happen, and then I make sure that those things do happen, that planning takes place and that teams are deployed and that intel is gathered and put back into the system where it needs to go so that they can make additional valid decisions.
For the folks watching the show, I'm sorry, Rob.
That's okay.
For the folks watching the show, can we talk about ESF positions? Can you explain ESF and what his ESF is and what yours is and how it kind of ties in?
I absolutely can. After Hurricane Andrew, we decided that none of our plans were quite right. So the federal government came in and changed their comprehensive plan. The state of Florida mirrored that plan, and now all 67 counties mirror the state's plan. What an emergency support function is, or ESF-7, it's like transportation. It's their own agency. So ESF-1 would be transportation. If I have something wrong with our infrastructure and I need to talk to the state, I need equipment in, I would say, let me talk to your ESF-1. So we all talk the same language. And in Manatee County, we go all the way up to 18, 18 emergency port functions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as far as, I know you were personally deployed, as well as Charlie, down to Charlotte County after Hurricane Charlie. And you were basically, part of that mutual aid that you talked about as far as going down there. Now, what exactly did you do down there? Is it the same function that you would do, say, up here?
It is. I was an incident commander for over 10 days down there, and then I brought Charlie and the whole staff, including yourself, Rob, and we went down there and actually ran their emergency operations center. The functions down there were about the same as what we do, but a little bit different, and that's why I say we really need to train to each other's programs so that when you jump in ground zero, you're right up and running instantly.
So as far as this whole mutual aid region-wide, statewide, or maybe even part of the U.S. Scope of a disaster, because of those ESFs and this where you can plug in different functions without relearning the job function, that shows the advantage of that. You can actually scale that, I guess.
In Hurricane Charlie, after we were going to leave, North Carolina group came in called EMAC. They came in and they were able just to sit right into our slots and pick it up and run. So there was no downtime. And some of the counties are really working that way towards what we call Incident Command System, ICS. Some of them still need to train, and that's why I say in emergency management, we've got to focus in on that so we immediately can support each other with the same type of functions, and that's what the state of Florida is working towards, as well as the whole United States, I'm sure.
So if God forbid something should happen to, say, you two, or maybe you're not available for response for whatever reason, somebody from, say, out of the region could actually just basically step into your role.
It absolutely will happen to us. As the management side of the house, we will be impacted. We'll be so stressed, we probably will not be effective. So we may be in the EOC sitting behind the primary, in my case, the incident commander, but we probably won't be the lead until we can get our family situation okay. We know if our house is okay. And that happens to a lot of emergency managers. They try to jump right in and do it, and they're not effective because of the stress.
So conditioned to just start helping that they
Absolutely.
forget to take care of themselves.
Absolutely.
Let's go hypothetical for a second. Where a tsunami or earthquake, shift, shelf, whatever came off the Canary Islands, it's now heading this way. It's going to hit the east coast from Miami to Boston. Big tsunami. It impacts the entire east coast, probably part of the central part of the state to some degree. We have, as is happening now, where the tsunami took place, multi-nation interaction. How do you crank up something like that? And is there a multi or international plan, or is there just, does the United States use the National Incident Management System? I know they do, but like how would you integrate your skills or your element in a situation involving other countries and multiple agencies from other countries?
Well, the United Nations has a program that they use. It's called disaster preparedness, and basically it's emergency management, and they'll operate underneath that program. And NIMS will operate underneath NIMS, or the National Incident Management System, which really follows and parallels that. The UN program that they use is based off of ICS and off the Incident Command System. So any impact that's going to happen on that East Coast is going to really impact us. Even if we don't feel the effects of any water or anything over here, it goes right back down to self-sufficiency, and that the folks in Florida, the majority of them, are a lot better prepared than other folks up and down the East Coast to withstand a natural disaster.
I know you've talked about that on previous shows, where if somebody has this to-go kit or jump kit or this little disaster supply kit for themselves and their family, whether it's power outages, hurricanes, tsunamis, or whatever, 90% of what's in this kit is pretty much good
Yeah,
across terrorism. It's good across all those.
Your disaster preparedness kit is we used to call them hurricane kits here,
Right.
but your disaster preparedness kit is good for anything. And the only thing you really need to do is to make sure that the perishable items or that the batteries that are in there are up to speed. Pass those batteries out to the kids and let them play with them in their Nintendos and Walkmans and what have you, and update your food and your water. Pull it out and have a picnic and eat it, and then replenish it and resupply it immediately. But most of the folks in the state of Florida have those kits and have built things that are customized to them with their medications and extra pair of glasses and the radios and the batteries and all that. So we're light years ahead of a lot of other people up and down the East Coast that may not be that prepared.
So to some extent, this region-wide response starts with the folks at home, really. I mean, not necessarily the people in government, but the better that people can help themselves, the better off we all are. And there's these community emergency response teams or CERT teams, which actually kind of is a skill set that jumps off of that being self-sufficient, so to speak.
It really illustrates and highlights the importance of being involved with a community response and preparedness team like CERT. Mm-hmm. And CERT training is available in the county. Mr. Dick Haynes is our planner that runs that program, and folks can get in touch with him at the regular county number that I'm sure that you guys will show. And he'd be happy to get them involved in a CERT team. And you're going to feel better about yourself if you're taking care of yourself versus having somebody take care of you.
Absolutely. So that's kind of neighbors helping neighbors, so to
Right.
speak.
We need to stress that citizens need to prepare for a minimum of 72 hours. That's a minimum, because it takes government that long to bring the resources in. So a minimum of 72 hours, and we find, excuse me, that wasn't happening during the hurricanes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
When you think of that, we're in a very civilized, industrialized country, but now you look at that part of the world that's hit in Sri Lanka, Sumatra, they're not prepared for much. I mean, they just don't have the means. What kind of logistical challenges would you encounter if you were sent over there to function as incident commander or in any capacity of an ESF position that we may take for granted here in the United States because we have the luxury of an organized system and a significant amount of means?
If we were deployed over there, we would go over what's called fully sustained. We would know where we're going, we would know there's food and water there for us, and we would have sheltering. Even within mutual aid in the state of Florida, we don't deploy to help someone unless we're fully sustained, because a county that's impacted, you don't want to burden them anymore. And we did see that during Hurricane Charlie down in Charlotte. And then talking with all the other emergency managers up and down the state that were impacted, people came to help them, good-willed, but then they became the problem, because what do? You've got to provide portalettes, if there's no water and food and so forth. So we would go over an organized group, we would go up through the state of Florida and be deployed that way, and so there'd be a cadre of experts.
Is there a possibility of anyone from our state getting sent there in time? I mean, it's obviously not going to be a quick operation. The major impact's over, but the long-term ramifications we're going to address in a few minutes with some other experts. We're going to talk about that, but is there a possibility that people from within the United States or in the state of Florida may be sent over there at?
It's always a possibility. I've not heard of that, but that's why Governor Bush was over there assessing exactly what needed to be done with all his experience he just had in the state of Florida. So it is a possibility, but we would be deployed through the state of Florida, Division of Emergency Management, if that were to happen.
Okay.
Yes. And that's catastrophic. That would be a lot of lessons learned, I'm sure, but a lot of tragedy and sadness with that deployment.
How do you size up that incident right now? How do you see it at this point?
Long term. It is going to be a long term, and what they're really doing right now is just trying to figure out how much food and water, is there even a road system, what's the medical needs. So you're looking at life safety first. You always do that, and you do your search and rescue. You look to see if there's still victims out there. You set up your mass casualty hospitals and so forth to take the medically infirmed in, and then after all of that, parallel actually to it, people should start planning for the short-term, long-term recovery. Now you're going on the recovery side. And that's actually more difficult than the response, because we respond a lot and then we don't get hits with hurricanes and so forth. The recovery is the tough nut to crack.
That became apparent during this last hurricane season here. I think we take for granted because we were all good at initial response, do the emergent stuff right away. But it's the long term after everybody's gone with the initial excitement, and really that's when the kind of chronic problems start to sneak up. How do you view over there?
It's going to take years and years and years, and nothing like what we have ever seen or encountered or experienced in our past. And thank goodness that we're not there, and I feel sorry for them and wish we could do more. But the impact that they're going to feel is going to last for generations. We think that it's really bad that impact is being still felt from Hurricane Charlie on some of our local residents. I had to answer a question yesterday and help a lady that had roof issues yesterday from Hurricane Charlie. And we have people that think that that's really long term. That's been a long time. Well, it's been since August. That type of major disaster is going to go on for generations. It's not going to be solved in 5 or 10 or 20 years, but generations.
So we have one lesson, I think, for the people at home, and that's be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Get those disaster kits put together, and then we'll take a look at our long-term solution with our next guest. Stay tuned.
Thank you guys very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Welcome back. Now we'll take a look at the long-term ramifications of a widespread disaster. We have the Public Health Preparedness Planner, John Burns from the Health Department, and also Emergency Management Planners, Steve Simpson and Paul Womble. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we talked with Chief Lori Fagans and Operations Officer Charlie Roberts earlier about the tsunami and that type of thing, and we kind of equated it on a smaller scale of what would happen here and that type of stuff. John, I'd like to start with you by asking you from a public health perspective, both in the emergent stages of an incident of that nature and in the short term of the long-term haul, what would be your primary concerns if something like that were to happen here in Manatee County?
We stand in support of the medical community and coordinating local medical issues to ensure that that infrastructure gets up, operational, and can respond. Our initial concerns are always life safety, support of the life safety functions, making sure medical supplies are being brought in, making sure, if necessary, disaster mortuary teams are being brought in, disaster medical teams are being brought in, and ensuring that emergency medical services here in the county have the support from surrounding communities to respond to a situation of that size.
So basically you're saying you don't come in and take over and say, here, we're here to run everything. You're basically supporting the local responders.
The Health Department sits as the lead agency under the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan for Emergency Support Function number 8.
Okay.
We work as an integral part of the county emergency management operation and answer to the emergency manager.
Okay.
Good, good.
Paul, can I ask you, with your job as an emergency planner, can you kind of walk us through what your responsibilities are prior to something like this happening, and what they might be if something like that were to happen here?
Well, prior to an event, we're looking at some of these long-term planning issues, trying to get all the players that would be involved in the Emergency Operations Center activation to train together, as Chief Fagans mentioned, lots of planning initiatives. And then when we do activate the EOC, the emergency management staff, we fill some of those ESF roles, emergency support functions, based on the staff, based on the event and the needs of the event.
Steve, how about you? Same question that I asked Paul, but just what might you do in addition or in that situation?
Very same basic things. We co-share a lot of responsibilities.
Okay.
And as Paul said, we have, depending on staffing and what we need, we may be filling other roles other than planning. We may be filling operations or logistics or whatever roles that are needed to get the mission done.
And also for the long term, in this whole mutual aid coming into it, you were, I believe, in Polk County, Charlotte, and was it Hardee?
Charlotte and Hardee.
Hardee County. So that kind of long term where the local responders are impacted and certainly stretched to the max, then that's something that you all have done personally.
Right, we went in to help those counties that were impacted, their homes and families were impacted, and quite frankly, the amount of work they had to do, they needed extra staff, so we were able to go in and assist those counties. It was still their operation. We didn't go in to take over, but we were there to provide them assistance.
John, now that the primary emergent crisis has passed in the sense that the tsunami is no longer hitting them, there are tons of secondary public health concerns as far as secondary, tertiary health concerns as far as environmental safety. Can you address from a public health perspective what they're likely to be facing over the next long haul? I guess it'll be quite some time.
Post-event, they're looking at diseases, primarily water-spread diseases or waterborne diseases and vector-borne diseases, and they're interrelated. Where you have floodwaters and standing water, you're going to have mosquito breeding. Where you have mosquito breeding, you have the potential for disease spread. Additionally, without safe drinking water, that's a key for medicine, that's a key for living purposes, cooking and regular drinking on a daily basis in a tropical environment. You have to have clean drinking water, otherwise all those waterborne illnesses and enteric pathogens that you're going to get from the water supply. So the key on any recovery effort is going to be providing a safe water supply initially, and then following that up with infrastructure support on sewage disposal. And when you have a handle first on the medical end and on the water end and on the sewage disposal end, then you've created a loosely woven safety net under the population so they're not going to fall victim to disease.
In the past, I've heard that as far as the initial casualties, it could be up to 3 times that many in the long term due to disease, particularly with earthquakes in undeveloped countries like Larry was talking about. Now, hopefully here in the United States, where we have more medicines and water purification items available, it wouldn't be the triple the number of casualties versus the initial disaster. But what particular measures do you have as far as getting that water purification to the folks that need it? Anything in particular?
At the Emergency Operations Center, we talk with both purveyors, both of the primary large purveyors of water, the county utilities and the City of Bradenton system, on a regular basis to ensure that their water supplies are being maintained in a safe and sanitary fashion. If they have any problems, they bring it to our attention, and public service announcements go out with water disinfection recommendations.
So like the boil water alerts?
That's the precautionary water notice, the boil water alerts, the items of that sort.
Good.
Let me ask you two guys, get both your opinions or both takes on it. Given where they're at now in the disaster, what do you see as the primary concerns aside from public health, which is massive, I know, but logistically, just infrastructure-wise, as far as maintaining multi-nation, multi-agency, jurisdictional control type things, as far as mitigating the disaster, how do you see it unfolding, and what is the biggest challenges?
Some of the challenges that I see are the lack of infrastructure. You know, we are blessed in the United States. There is lack of infrastructure. In the initial response phase, you know, there's certain things that may escape the mind. There is not enough air traffic controllers in that area to deal with the influx of responders. There's, as John mentioned, there's lack of the sanitation facilities, water facilities. You're dealing with a different political atmosphere also. There are certain things,
Politically and culturally.
There's politically and cultural differences that you have to deal with. You have to deal with religious differences. There are, for instance, in the island of Sumatra, there's an active rebel cadre going on, so you have to deal with that. You have to deal with all of those issues together, and working through the UN and the World Health Organization and other things is going to be a huge, huge project. And as Charlie said earlier, it's going to be many, many years.
Yes. Paul?
Well, the scope of the event, it's multi-countries. The actual geography is a challenge. You go from coastal to mountains, and you've got so many organizations and agencies, just the coordination, just to know that services are not being duplicated and the folks that really do need the services are getting those things they need. That's probably a very large challenge they're facing and will continue to face.
I suspect that with just the different nations that are trying to participate, well-meaning, but you've got language barriers, like you said, air traffic controllers, where they don't even have a tower in a lot of the grass run strips. You've got cattle on the run strip. You've got people whose culture believes that the fish are eating the decomposed bodies, therefore they can't eat the fish, so they're not going to eat the fish. So there's nutritional and health concerns and longevity concerns. John, how do you guys go out addressing, in a sort of a politically correct way, the cultural, social, political differences and still get the job done from public health?
You access the local government, first the country's government, whatever type of government that happens to be, and then the local government in order to properly access the people. You have to overcome the cultural and the language barriers, and you utilize locals to do that, much the way the federal government utilizes the local emergency management agencies to coordinate the funneling of their aid to us. It has to be handled in the same manner over there.
You're talking about the local customs and all that, and Larry had brought up about the third world nature of this impacted area and how that presents challenges, but I can also, and tell me if I'm wrong, it won't be the first time someone's told me I'm wrong, could that be an asset in that maybe these people aren't used to this technology and therefore are used to maybe gathering and preparing their own food more than, say, we are going to the grocery store and getting it, and maybe they're more used to not having air conditioning and electricity, say, than maybe we are. So since they might be used to living in those austere environments, could that possibly help them compared to, say, us who are so technology dependent? Or am I completely off base?
Well, again, it goes back to Chief Fagan's talked about assessing the needs, finding out what the folks really do need, and trying to meet those basic requirements, whatever they are. Our basic requirements for someone here in Manatee County are going to be quite different than the folks that are being impacted by this event overseas, but you still meet the basics and have to determine what those basics are.
Because their basics may be different than our basics,
right,
so to speak. Okay. Right.
Again, and I ask you guys the same question I asked our first two guests. What do you see long term, just in 30 seconds or less each? What do you see long term? How long? I know a long time, but I mean, like, what do you see as your primary concerns in your given discipline and then your disciplines as well?
From a public health standpoint, it's reestablishing the infrastructure, clean water, proper sewage disposal. You have to get the roads back in order to make the public health functions function. And replacement of infrastructure is what's going to make things work. Additionally, and I was listening to the news today, they've begun to address the psychological issues that are going to go on for, as Lori and Charlie said, generations there.
Paul?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's, some of the reports have been of children that have lost one or both parents, and those are just generations of citizens that have been impacted. So that doesn't just go away in a few years when they have a house to live in and hopefully water to drink and food to eat. They'll live with that for the rest of their lives. So those are long-term events that we've probably never faced in history with that type of impact.
Steve?
We're seeing estimates of 150,000 plus killed, 150,000 possibly, as John said, with the health problems coming out with may be affected or die from more disease coming through there because of their lack of infrastructure. And we're looking at 3 to 5 million people who still have immediate needs right now. And with all of that, you have, as I mentioned earlier, the differences in political situations. So there's going to have to be not only long-term solutions for helping these people, there's going to have to be, it's going to have to go along with the long-term political solutions so that everybody is taken care of in a good manner, and we're looking for at many years.
I don't in any way want to minimize what occurred in Florida, because we certainly were, this coast took a good hit this last hurricane season, but it in no way compares to the tsunami, and I'm not trying to make comparisons, but I think there's probably some good lessons learned for both of us, who we do live in a civilized country. I'm not the uncivilized over there, but we do live in a place with a lot of infrastructure in place, and we were faced with challenges, so I can only begin to imagine the challenges that they may be facing. Rob, you want to wrap it up here?
Yeah, and I'd like to thank all our guests, John Burns from the Health Department and the whole emergency management team, Chief Fagans, Charlie Roberts, Steve and Paul, And it's good to know that the plans are in place, not only here locally, but also statewide and regionally through all these mutual aid agreements, that if something, God forbid, should happen to that scope here, there is something in place to have a response and help out the citizens here.
Thanks for joining us. Join us next time on Lifelines. And remember, safety is your lifeline. So long.